Welcome to the Learning Reinvented Podcast, brought to you by myself, Katie Godden.
And James Politilo of The Learning Effect. There are lots of learning podcasts out there, and we want to do something slightly different. As we draw to the end of 2024, Katie and I just wanted to look back at the year and summarize some of our reflections. So, Katie, what's 2024 meant for you?
I think what's really shone through is AI, and it more than what I thought it would have done. I know we spoke about that last year as a trend, but I definitely feel that AI is definitely taking over a lot more. You're starting to see it more in kind of how you're working. You can use it in your work a lot easier. We're starting to see images. You're starting to see it a lot more on social media. So that's something that I knew would take off, but I think I wasn't expecting it to take off quite as much as what it did. So yeah, that's a really big trend that I've seen. What about you?
I think just building on the AI point, I think AI has become sort of prevalent where lots of people are using it. Obviously, with any adoption curve, there's people who are way ahead, some people in the middle, and some people who are still not even got a clue what it is or are not using it in any way, shape, or form, or possibly unaware they're using it in tools that they're using which have AI over the top. But I think as well as that adoption and the use of it, you're starting to see the impact and the ripple of AI. So what are the knock-on effects of more people using AI? And I think that's what I've certainly noticed grow throughout the year, and seeing that in all sorts of parts of life. If you take, things like social media or sales material, I think people can, some people are pretty unsavvy in how they're using, let's take the most common types of AI people are using, things like, Chat GPT, and they'll say, oh, write me a LinkedIn post on this, write me a sales introduction on this. And because there's patterns to AI, it's sort of written in a certain style, you can spot it straight away. And as sort of interesting, some people just put it up straight away. It's clearly from AI. Maybe some people don't notice it, maybe others do. Other people are sort of, writing an article, asking AI to polish it, and then un-AIifying it in terms of trying to make it not sound like AI. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's a whole load of moralistic and interesting questions around that and around resonance. And will we start switching off to AI content? Does it really connect to us? Will the AI learn from what we do, what we engage with, what we like? Will therefore, posts that we're putting out that are purely off AI, and, maybe people do switch off or switch on, will the AI tweak itself to react to those in ways maybe we as humans won't? So I think there's lots of questions around there, and it's still bedding in, and there's good, bad, and indifferent across it. So it feels like we're still very early in that journey, but it is going to be a journey.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. I think you're starting to see more AI, as we've mentioned, but it's just trusting what we're looking at as well. I think that's what I found this year and felt towards kind of social media posts, especially is it real or is it not? Especially when it comes to the imagery, I think you can tell, but when it comes to posts and stuff like that, and even people's accounts, are they people or is it AI? And it's just understanding what is real and what's not. I think that's something that's really stood out, and I think going forward, I don't know if it's something that we need to put in more processes when it comes to kind of work processes. I mean, in regards to using AI, whether we need more process around that so we can stop certain things happening potentially, because we're kind of taking the human element away, which is obvious because we're using AI. However, how much do you want to take that away, and what would the bigger impact be on people if we start to take that away and don't have that human interference, I guess, by adding those processes, adding those protocols in? So that's what I think that we should be looking at.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of interesting sort of approaches to AI where, almost people are just delegating off, and I suppose it's always happened. You maybe get a task and you'll have seen certain managers just go, oh, I'll give that to my team member, 'cause I don't really care about that. And I think there's a lot of that now with AI, where people are doing bits of work that maybe seem quite tick boxy or laborious, or they don't really feel connected with. And so they just turn to AI to do that task. And it may do the task functionally, but I think there's a wider impact of engagement with work and engagement with ownership of things and value that individuals will feel. Because what am I actually doing? If I'm just sat there going, oh, what does ChatGPT think of this? Or what does Copilot? Or, just being prompted through my life, what ownership and control? And I think there might be longer term knock-on effects of that we probably are starting to see now, but I think will become more prevalent, because it can't be very fulfilling in my view, again, a personal view, is to just be there effectively becoming a curator of tasks into AI and then fishing it back. And those of us who have the mindset of me, if I'm doing something, I want it to be as easy as possible and straightforward, but I also want to feel ownership and value. But if I went with just the first part of my personality, yeah, I could just almost completely disengage from my work in some ways and just spend my whole time trying to work out how I can get a load of AI agents running and doing my job for me, which, might work for some people, but for me, the connection to work is more important than that, because it's a part of part of who I am, as well as anything else. Your work and outside work. And I think, yeah, I've seen some strange behaviors from, you know, right across the sphere in terms of how people are engaging and the value set they apply to AI.
Yeah, most definitely. I think we need to remember to humanize the AI elements. This is where I talk about kind of creating those processes around that as well. It's so you don't lose those pieces that you were speaking about. Um, and I think in regards to kind of sort of learning an AI, I think it can be a really powerful tool. Like you said, it's a tool that enables you to easily curate content essentially. And I think we can use that, but it's making sure we use it in the right way. So not everything that we're creating is AI, because we don't want it all to be taken over by that. We still need to create that human element and humanize that as well. And I think that's something that we just need to be cautious of going into the next year.
I think another thing I've reflected on through the year and I've seen as a bit of a pattern, and it's not necessarily sort of predominantly in learning, but it is around all aspects of sort of processes which AI have caught up with. And I'll pick a couple that I've seen it really evidently in. One's recruitment, and the other is procurement processes, where you've got RFPs and responses. And because people are now using AI tools to support them in job applications, so they're sat there and they can shove the job advert, the company values, and their existing CV into AI and basically say, make me fit this role. It that creates a real problem for the person at the receiving end of the job, because it lowers the barrier to entry. So I know uh, jobs are just being flooded with more and more applications, and people have dropped the barriers to entry to make it easier to apply for jobs. But then you're like, well, how do we sift through and find the right people? And if it's easier for people to masquerade and look like they are the right fit, how do the best quality people stand out? So I think there's some real questions around processes like that will have to work themselves out, because again, in examinations and academia, what are we really testing? Because there's this sort of poacher and gamekeeper approach to trying to work out whether someone's used AI or not, and different approaches in different academic circles as to, well, is AI like using a calculator? And I know there's still some exams where you have to go in without a calculator, but is it a tool or is it not? And what are we really testing and assessing in what people are doing? So there's some real processes that are impacted by AI, and one I've certainly seen in the sphere we're in, where we're helping people either deal with RFPs that are coming in, where we help our supplier clients, or on the other hand, when we're helping our customer clients who are going out and putting out RFPs to get information back. I think again, it's so much easier to be able to go through and create documentation or responses to RFPs and sift through them, that you're getting more responses than you've ever had before. Again, it's really hard to sift between them. There's a real need to think about what you're trying to achieve, and I think that goes back to everything. But what system are you trying to procure and why? What solution are you trying to solve with a procurement process and why? And the same with recruitment. What skill set, attributes, behaviors, engagement are you trying to bring into your organization and why? And I think, without going back to those core questions, people are getting lost in the existing processes, being swamped by the AI enabled world.
Yeah, and you by doing this as well, we're creating a really uneven playing field for people, because you're potentially going to get lots of people either applying for a job or for an RFP, and they're not the right candidate, whether it's they haven't got the right skill set, they haven't got the right experience. However, AI enables you to be able to seem like you have the right experience and the right skill set. And I think that's where we need these processes to come in. I don't know what the answer is to those, but something needs to be put in so we can ensure that we don't have that going forward, because we're going to end up getting the wrong people in the wrong jobs, if that carries on and continues, because equally the people creating the job applications or job roles, are they putting the right information into AI? Are they really getting to the core of what we're needed in that job specification, etc.? But equally, are we getting the right candidates back? And how do we know? And because AI can make it sound really good, and obviously, if you're going into an interview, hopefully at that point you'd become unstuck a little bit, because you wouldn't necessarily be able to answer questions. But if you've got someone that's perhaps good at doing interviews, and easily can adapt and answer questions, and quick thinkers, are they going to get around that and then potentially get into a job that's not right for them? And equally the same for people applying for RFPs. Are they going to say the right answers? I think RFPs are a lot more difficult as well, because you don't have that much of that interview space. A lot of it's written answers, and if you've put that into AI and it's kind of enhanced your answers and made them sound really good, rather than just a simple yes or no, I think that's where you're potentially going to get into a contract which you can't get out of. And I think this is where we need to ensure that we've got those good processes around the outside. I think for RFPs, this is where we need to bring in expertise and, make sure that you've got really good sandboxes. So you've got that really good understanding to begin with. What are we trying to achieve here? What problems are we trying to solve? What challenges do we need to face? And what technology is the suitable technology? I think you work off some of that RFP, but you take it with a pinch of salt. But then the ones that are super interesting, that's where you get them in and you think about sandboxing. How can we replicate what we're trying to achieve? And that's where I think that will become more useful, because things like AI can't necessarily help with that, because it does or it doesn't, and I think the same with the recruitment side of thing. It's the interview. You've got to be more rigorous in that interview, and ask different questions perhaps, or have a different approach to it. Maybe scenario based, where AI can't be as easy to answer that question. So
Yeah, and I think you sort of raise some ways of getting around that, and a lot of them are second stage. And I think it's
yeah.
that first stage that often, imagine you're applying for a job and you're the perfect applicant for the job, but suddenly because of AI, you're now amongst 200 perfect applicants for the job, so you don't get shortlisted for the interview. So there's an element here where, I mean, that problem has always existed in certain elements where there is an oversupply. There's always, how do you sift correctly? But there will be people I know listening to this going, AI can help, AI can help you with this. But I think my point more is, as AI is coming in, it's sort of driving two behaviors of this over reliance on AI to solve the problems, but also this shortcut I can do it with AI. More things are achievable. And we're seeing, the same sort of pile workload on people where they're expected now to produce more. Because you can do that. I don't need to recruit a replacement when someone leaves because you can do that with AI. You can turn
Yeah.
out more and more stuff. And I think people's engagement with work is changing because the expectation is to produce more, think less about the quality, put less of yourself into it because you've got these tools that take a lot of the way out, the things out of that job process. And it might be if you don't feel engaged or that's not your skill set, that's really helpful and that helps you along the way. But there's going to be a real disruption and evening out of things over the coming years as we try and work out what the right balance is. And going back to the overall processes, you've mentioned processes, procedures, etc. But what are the right ones and the right things going forward, and how do we keep those ever fluid so that they're not becoming outdated and we've got levels of control on them? I did a talk on AI a couple of months ago, and someone raised and said, "Oh, I'm not worried about AI in my industry because I work in sales and it's all about people." And my challenge back was, well, what if you're not selling to people, you're selling to AI? Because it could be eventually we're almost farming out these functions and going, AI can sell to AI. So I write a brief, I set my AI agent to go out there, research the market, analyze against that market, bring me back a summary, and I make a decision, or I even abdicate the decision or delegate the decision to AI. So I think there is so much potential for change, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent change, we are in control of. But the more we seed, we might start to lose elements of control of that because we haven't really taken the time, effort, and energy to think about those things, or we've got either swept up in a wave of excitement and innovation and opportune gold rushes and opportunities to make money, or we've just got swept up because we've been too busy not thinking that the things will change and suddenly it's changed before we've realized it. So no, I think there's been a lot and probably a very different shift than we would have viewed a year ago, and I think the coming year will be similar. But I think we need to be aware that we need to take more control and be more thoughtful on things and watch things as they're moving under us, because I think we naturally take a step back and look at those things happening. But when you're holding that mirror up to clients and saying, maybe this is taking longer because you've got more applications because it's easier for people to apply. Again, people aren't thinking they're just on the hamster wheel doing the job and maybe not seeing the change that's happening around them.
Yeah, and I think when you're working in big organizations to get things implemented, for example, AI, is quite difficult, whereas when you're working in a small consultancy like us, it's a lot easier, obviously, for us to be able to implement, to play around with, and to use and kind of integrate AI into our everyday lives. We're able to do that a lot easier. But it's just being, like we said, very conscious and very cautious that we're not potentially losing people's skill sets as well. I think that's something that I've really noticed that you could potentially lose because AI's come in at such fast pace, and the capabilities it's got are so great. I'd be really sad that if people then lost the ability to kind of problem solve themselves or, think differently, or, I don't want people's skill sets just to purely be inputting into AI or talking into AI. We need all of these other bits as well, because that's what makes us human and that's what makes life interesting. Otherwise, everything's going to be the same. And where do you draw the line? We've fought hard for things to all be different, and to have that multitude of different ways of doing stuff. And it'd be a shame if we kind of changed that and we all went back to the same way, because that's what AI does. So yeah, I think it's really powerful, and I think it's really great as a tool, but I think it comes with challenges, and I think that this year's definitely highlighted those in more ways than what we've seen previously. I think it was a bit of excitement of the unknown and a bit of fear of the unknown, but now we're starting to see what it can actually do and the potential, and I think we've just got to be a bit cautious with it.
Yeah, on a non-AI related
Mhm.
positive note for us as a business, I think the last year has further cemented for us the value we add to our clients because, seeing beyond what they might contract us to. So come in and, I know you've been doing projects to go and research new bits of tech and, to fields that we haven't been experienced in before, but you've gone out and brought those fresh eyes and really helped both the supplier and client sides. And I've been helping with, businesses with transforming how they do sort of learning and beyond, a lot broader in what they're doing. But that holistic thought that we bring and that commerciality, that user focus, the constant question of why should I do this? I know it's, one of your, but why would anyone do this question that you always ask, or, that we bring to those projects, I know saves clients, and they will tell us it will save them weeks, months, burnt money, get them to better solutions. And I think where people are almost lost a little bit, and it's not just AI, it's the whole change of the world, it's austerity, it's instability in politics and the world, that people are feeling things coming at them from all directions. And it feels like for our clients we've really been a safe haven and an element of stability to those clients where they can come to us and we create some clarity. It's like, I feel sometimes with the shining light in the dark for our clients of the, we can see a way through this. We can step back, we can guide you through, we can give you that confidence, that reassurance. And that to me this year has sort of been my positive highlight of how we help those clients through that instability, that overwhelm of choice, that insecurity, or just ability to know where to start, and that it's okay to step and not be 100% certain, but go with the right principles and the right guiding understanding what you're trying to achieve. So I think that to me is my biggest highlight of the year. It's not one particular one, it's just the general value we've been adding back to clients in that sort of instability of the world.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, everything does feel a bit more unstable this year. I'm not entirely sure why. I know that there's been lots of changes, but it feels more unstable than when we had COVID and stuff like that for some reason. Um, but yeah, definitely. I think I've been lucky to work with one particular client for the majority of this year and working on different projects, and it's given me different experiences in new technology in regards to learning. So that's been a real eye opener, and it's been really interesting being able to take my client on that journey as well. To show them the possibilities and not just go with kind of the firm favorites that tend to pop up, that we've listen to the challenges that they're facing and we're able to go out research and bring really good options for them that ultimately kind of saves them time doing that, but money in the long run because we can get kind of good options as well. um, and then in regards to like implementation and stuff like that, so that's a project that's still ongoing, so that's exciting as well. So
And I think, in terms of looking forward to next year, we're going to pick that up in 2025 with our first podcast of the new year. But as we draw this year to a close, I think it's just a thank you to all of our listeners, our clients, our suppliers, partners, colleagues, just the people who are part of our wider network. And yeah, we'd love to hear what your take are on either our thoughts or your own thoughts as to what you've made of 2024.
yes, thank you very much for all of our listeners and clients and our guests that have joined us on the podcast over the last year. So happy holidays and a happy new year.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Learning Reinvented podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you've not already done so, please follow our podcast. And if the learning effect can help you and your organisation, please do get in touch. You can find both James and Katie on LinkedIn, and our contact details are in the show notes below.